All right. So the title of this is Finding Success Outside of Your Own Country and Culture. Super pleased to be here with this panel. Really excited. We just had a bunch of kind of warm-up chat. And I think you're going to really get a lot of value out of the folks here. So I guess I'll just kind of come from this side across. So on the far end we have Andrew Mock. He's the CMO of Turo. I'm going to have each of the panelists will kind of talk a little bit about what Turo is, what Smule is, what PicsArt is, et cetera. So, but then next to him is Kristina Kern, Director of Client Services, North America, Europe, Middle East, and Asia for Aarki. Is I pronouncing that right?
Aarki. Aarki,
I'm sorry. I'm dyslexic. So, and then Jeff Roberto, VP of Growth Marketing at PicsArt, and Eugenia Kovalenko. No? All right, close. That's what I get for living in Eastern Europe. VP of Growth at Smule. Smule? Smule. All right. Why don't maybe we go in the opposite direction, and you can tell us a little bit about your respective companies.
Sure. For those who don't know Smule, we're a social singing app when users around the world can create music together and have this co-creation experience with multiple people together. And people come to our app to sing or improve their singing, but they stay for friendships that they made on Smule. So it's a unique platform where users express themselves through music. If you think about Instagram, people express themselves through photo, Snapchat, camera. We're the first music expression platform out there with this co-create experience. And we're pretty global, with around 40 million monthly active users around the world, from LATAM, Southeast Asia, India, France, and so on. So that's a really relevant topic for me to be on this panel.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Hey, I'm Jeff Roberto from PicsArt. Who here uses PicsArt? Show of hands. All right, by the end of this panel, there'll be a few more people, if not all of you. So PicsArt today is the world's largest creative community. We have over 150 million monthly active creators on our platform. We're largely global in over 30 languages. The thing that makes us different is we've paired the tools, thousands of them, with community. So kind of all the social features you'd find on your favorite social platform, plus content. And our content plays a little bit different. It's free to edit, free to use. You don't have to make your uploads or your posts free to use or free to edit, but you can choose to do so. And if you do that, then others on the network can remix or re-edit your work. So that makes for a very interesting dynamic within our community. And then of course, the logical progression off of that is sharing to social media, and that's kind of by and large how we grow forward, is very organically across the major social platforms. And we're agnostic in the sense that we have integrations with all of them, and they're all equally as important to our world.
Awesome.
Hi, Kristina from Aarki. We're a global DSP specializing and focusing on creative optimization, large scale, as well as positive ROI. Oh, and I'm director of account management for North America and for EMEA on UA and retargeting campaigns.
Awesome. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Andrew. I work for a company called Turo. Turo is the world's largest peer-to-peer car-sharing marketplace. It's a lot of jargon. A lot of folks like to basically call us the Airbnb for cars. As the marketing guy, I really hope one day, probably not soon, but hopefully one day people will call Airbnb the Turo for homes instead, but we got a little bit of ways to go. So the fundamental problem that we're solving is traditional car ownership. I like to call it car ownership 1.0. So I'll just, this is a numbers-oriented crowd, so I'll just throw some stats at you. In just the United States, there's 270 million registered passenger vehicles. There's only 210 million licensed drivers. So there's actually more cars in the US than there are drivers. It's pretty crazy. And you've probably grown up and heard your entire life that cars are like the worst investment asset, worst investment vehicle, no pun intended. Unlike real estate, it doesn't appreciate in value. As soon as you buy it and you drive it off the lot, you lose 20% in value. At the same time, average household income has only been growing at about 3% annually. The average cost of a car payment has been growing at about 6% annually. So thanks to the unfortunate reality of compound growth, the disparity between how much it costs to own a car versus how much the average person is making is widening. Up to the point where actually there's now 7 million Americans who are 3 months or more behind in their car payment, which is the largest number ever. And you can imagine this is a huge problem for the world because in most parts of the world, having access to a car is literally being able to have access to the economy. It's the ability to drop your kids off at school, the ability to drive to work. A lot of people need their car actually for their work. So, in many ways, car ownership is expensive, but it's becoming harder and harder to afford. And so that's where Turo comes in. We're reinventing the economics of car ownership. The average host on Turo over the course of sharing their car for just 9 days a month makes $700 from sharing their car. The average monthly car payment is about $600. So you basically get a free car plus a little bit more for sharing for 9 days. And then on the other side of the marketplace, you have travelers who are looking to get, we say great cars at great prices. You get access from everything from Tesla Model 3 to, in San Francisco, we've got trucks that run on veggie oil to classic Cadillac Eldorados, literally everything under the sun. And typically it's at prices that are cheaper than traditional rental car. So, we really like to think it's a win-win value proposition. I've been with the company for almost 8 years now. So it's been a fun journey. All right.
Awesome.
And rant.
No, it's good stuff. Good stuff. Cool. So I'll start off with a kind of a softball that anybody can answer. Does localization matter? Does it make a difference? If so, what's the impact?
I can jump in. So I said earlier we're 30 plus languages. It absolutely matters. It's actually how we came to be. We launched product in Eastern Europe, Middle East area of the world, and on Android only, but started localizing. And then we built that into iOS, and then eventually launched Community in our content play. But before all those caught on, it was really, do we have product market fit? And the only way to establish that is by being in local language and understanding what's resonating and where. And of course, the product needs to talk to people in their language. So yes, very much so for us.
On our end, I would say you kind of need to define if the core of your product needs localization, right? Like for us, music. Wow, needs to be super relevant to any market, right? If it's like a gaming app, or maybe you just need some UX changes and translations. So I think understanding is the core experience needs to have a component of localization. That's the core first step. And of course, for us, yes, we knew from the day one that we had to have localized content. And our community, I talked about our community as a core fuel of our business. We empowered them to, upload the songs they want to sing, and the lyrics, the music, and so on. And we created technology around it. So we pretty much hacked our way to have our millions and millions of songs around the world without doing any efforts of localizing that content. So I think that's the key, because localization is hard. Can you hack your way to do it? And yes, it has tremendous impact on retention, revenue, and so on if you do it right.
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd say from the other side of it is, yes, the most obvious answer is you should be localizing your creative. At Aarki, we localize creative for our partners up to 22 languages. It improves overall engagement. You're going to see the positive CTRs as well as installs. But what happens is you're going to have to make sure that the connection between showing localized creatives with localized copy, CTA, and even characters, for instance, for gaming, is that it translates to the user experience, that there's no disconnect. Otherwise, you're going to see some drop off. So it's a little bit of both. You have to use localization for creative optimization, but then also consider good optimizations overall through the funnel.
And no Google Translate.
Let's say that again.
Sorry, I said, and no Google Translate.
Yeah.
It's a joke in our office because, in the earlier days, things were too literal in terms of their translation, and we actually missed the mark in many ways. And over time, we have local people and local markets actually helping us,
right? I mean,
making us more culturally relevant.
It makes total sense. As as an American citizen and a former American resident, right? When you see that an app is just poorly translated, right, you immediately have kind of a different kind of sense of approach to it, and your likelihood to monetize is going to drop, et cetera. But I mean, so one thing that's kind of interesting is what do you think is the most important? Is it the user experience of the app itself? Is it the content within the app? Is it localized ASO? Is it localized user acquisition campaigns and creative? Or is there something that if you have to do you have to do it holistically? You have to choose your market and do the full stack there, or what's it look like, or what's it look like for you, each of you?
I would say you start small and test, right? Like you first need to figure out which market actually has potential for your product. Again, I will repeat myself. If the core experience required some localization, yes, you will have to do it. But first, yes, maybe UA, app stores, that's your first kind of testing ground. And the monetization side of things, like you need to get some organic traffic to understand are users monetizing there or not? For example, for us, India we knew that it's a big strategic market for us. There's 23 languages in India. Yeah. So yeah, we started with English, which was predominant, but we started providing cultural relevant content there, right? And then we identify in our data, we see a large Tamil speakers on the south and then Hindi on the north. Okay, we will focus on just those two and start localizing and see the effect, right? So I think the app experience is important, but it has to be educated by some metrics that you believe in and some testing that you've done before, because waterfall kind of type of development won't help because there's so many countries out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say start with the core product and experience and content and get that kind of working off of small audience and testing before you're spending time on ASO and UA, especially UA, because it could be costly mistake if you're not optimized in product.
Yeah, and I'll add a point onto this. I mean, ours is, these folks, we talked before, they know way more about localization than me, so I'm sorry if I go off on a little bit of a tangent. For us, we sort of have a unique approach to localization because the product for us is like, it's the app, it's the website, but really at the end of the day, the product is the car. And so it's super important for us to make sure we have high quality cars, we have hosts who are committed to providing really good experiences. That's one of the biggest challenges of online marketplaces is you don't control the end-to-end experience. So for us, when we think about the two sides of the marketplace, you have the demand side, which is the people who are booking the cars. That's kind of like B2C, right? It's pretty straightforward. It's people who are looking for a car rental, car sharing, get access to a car. It's like Facebook, Google, et cetera. It's kind of SEO. It's kind of pretty standard. The host side is, we think about that as more of like B2B. It's kind of crazy to think about, but today we have 450,000 cars. But when I first started the company 8 years ago, I used to tell people like, oh yeah, I'm joining this company where you're gonna like give the keys to your car to a stranger. And everybody thought it was the craziest idea ever. I'm sure there's many of you in this room who would never hand over the keys to your car to a stranger. And so it's super important to have that human touch. Whether it's a salesperson, whether it's a BD person, whether it's a customer-facing customer support person, to sort of just walk them through the process. It's different than Uber and Lyft because with Uber and Lyft, like the analogy of driving a car is pretty straightforward. With Airbnb, the idea of sharing your home or renting out your apartment, vacation home has kind of been around for a while. This idea of sharing your car is completely new. And so you really need that like human touch to convince people and also to show them how to deliver a great experience. And so for us, localization is like, you pretty much have to do it, right? Like if I'm trying to convince somebody in Germany to list their car, they're not going to trust me. They're going to want to talk to somebody who's in Berlin. If you're in the UK, you're going to want to talk to somebody with a British accent. So localization is just kind of like par for the course. And it also helps us uncover very specific nuances about the market. There's different types of cars that people like in Germany versus in the United States. Surprise, surprise. And so I think that sort of on the ground, that sort of local presence, that person who's living and breathing the market is critical.
Do you find, I want to follow up on that a little bit, is there certain cultures where it's actually more common or more foreign to hand over the keys to your car? And do you choose markets that way based on cultural differences as well as language?
Yeah, it's definitely part of it. One of the big stats that we look at is car ownership per capita. And then we also look at sort of the country trends around the total cost of ownership of a car. So in markets where owning a car is becoming more and more expensive, that's where you tend to find people who are more likely to list their car. And fortunately or unfortunately, depends on how you want to define it. Probably fortunately, because it's better for the world. But owning a car is becoming a lot more expensive in most places. Like if you look at a place like China or Singapore or many parts of Europe, they're starting to rotate it so that only certain cars can drive on certain days of the week. Only if you have a certain type of permit can you own a car. In Singapore, to own a Honda Accord, total cost of ownership with all the fees and the import taxes is like $100,000. And it's because they want to reduce congestion, they want to reduce pollution. And so in those markets, it's really just a matter of dollars and cents, right? It's like if it's expensive, if you want to have access to a car, you can share it through the Turo marketplace, or if you want to own it, you're going to need to share it. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to afford it.
Awesome. I had a kind of a follow-up question for you, Jeff. We talked a little bit about offline about kind of the importance of. So just now you said, okay, obviously your core product experience has got to be kind of localized or understandable for the other market. But you've had some pretty remarkable success just driving kind of SAO as well. Maybe you could share a little bit of that.
Yeah, we treat ASO as our main acquisition channel today. So when I say that, I mean we're constantly testing on both Google Play and the App Store, and we're testing everything from description to messaging to screenshots to video to order of screenshots to various phrases that might be working in those particular markets, and it's just constant experimentation. It's like job never done, and day in, day out. And Google's made it a whole lot easier with experimentation tools. App Store hasn't made it so easy without having their own experimentation tools. So we're using a lot of other tactics, third parties, partners, to really, learn on iOS before we commit to changing things on the store. We've seen some wild swings. I mean, we've had some big fails as well in terms of doing the wrong thing and seeing significant decline in our ranking as a result of changing our title or changing a word or using the wrong video that doesn't drive conversion off the page view.
Is there a way to kind of frame what that wrong thing was, or is it just too specific to the markets? Or?
A few years ago, we changed the title of our app, not the name, not the brand, but the what we said next to it, photo, video. We got cute, put sticker up there, and it didn't convert as well. It's still there. It's in the subtitle today, but
sure.
We tried to put it up at the top. Didn't work.
It's a little out of sequence maybe from what we talked about, but you brought up partners. Does anybody want to speak to kind of either success or challenges they've had working with partners?
I can cover that. Yeah, on some point when we were working on localization and expansion, we were thinking, well, we can just do our own research, and we can be relevant. We definitely found out that we don't know because it will be cliche relevant, what you read on the internet, and then you develop the strategies around it. So we did a push into some strategic partnerships in our key markets where we'll work with local media partners, music labels, telcos, and so on, to run our brand campaigns, to help us with monetization and content in those markets. And they definitely gave us a lot of tips and tricks, what to do and not to do in those markets. And when we roll out certain features, we have this portfolio of partners, which we reach out to them and say, hey, what do you think about it? Give us feedback and so on. Then we solicit it, and then we decide how to proceed in a lean manner. So that's been very successful for us. I think, especially if you're thinking about doing brand marketing, more like TV integrations or any other deeper integrations within the society, you have to find the right partner, which will be a win-win for them as well. I wouldn't suggest just going and paying money. If we were doing a brand campaign here in the US, of course, I know people, I know the market, and we can pay. But in those markets, if you are not there, you have to find a win-win scenario.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I was going to kind of echo that. I think it depends on the market. I'm a big fan of bringing things in-house and having core team in-house and kind of having an agency model in the sense that, We are a hub of intelligence, and we can work with different regional offices, but most of the work and the core kind of intelligence lives, inside. But certain markets, we just can't do that. We need to hire local, and we need to hire local people to do the UA job or the ASO job or the localization job.
Any kind of want to make a statement about some of the markets that I think work to handle centrally and are more challenging to do with?
Well, China's on an island. China's its own own thing.
And that's our experience as well.
I mean, you have to hire locally, and you have to work with people in country, in region to make China work. We've made other countries work by the US office running a lot of that, but we're starting to now put people in more countries.
Sure.
Yeah.
I should say the partners that we work with, they're good partners, are partners who are willing to test. Just an example is like for retargeting. Although the app itself might be English language, and they may only want to test US, is really to make it US and rest of world. Be willing to test. These are your users. They speak English because they're known users, and just being willing to test out creative messaging, geos.
I'd actually love to echo that. Just I hate it when the moderator kind of takes over, but we basically work with Rakuten in Japan and with a company called PC Home, who nobody's ever heard of, out of Taiwan. Rakuten wants to be the last kind of stop on the train. They want it fully tested, like everywhere else in the world, first before they take a risk on anything. PC Home says, give us, we'll be your guinea pig. Let's just do this. And as a result, our sales in Taiwan actually exceed those in Japan pretty significantly, which is amazing because the size of market disparity is huge, right? So I totally echo your point.
Yeah, and I would add, just for us, you kind of have to solve backwards from like how important is the partner to achieving your business objectives. Obviously, if it's super important, you need to invest a lot into it. If it's not as important, it can be a little bit lower, lower effort, lower risk. For us, the most important partner for us, for different countries, is the insurance partner. So we have to have an insurance package, otherwise people aren't going to share their car. And you don't want to, if you're first of all, it's a new paradigm, right? Sharing your car. It's a new business model completely. You don't want to have a crappy insurance partner. You want to have creme de la creme, the best insurance company out there. So in Europe, we had our eyes set on a partnership with Allianz, who we work with now. Eugenia and I were talking about this beforehand. It's interesting as somebody who comes from more of like a performance marketing growth background. The work is very much, it's like you put in inputs and then you have, there's some variability, but you pretty much know what the output is going to be. There's like a feedback loop. But with partnerships in BD, it's not like that. You can work 80 hours a week, you can work 100 hours a week, you can work 10 hours a week, you might have the exact same result. It's really more of, relationship building, negotiation, establishing leverage, things like that. And so I think it's, I guess the learning for me there was just like being a lot more patient with partnerships. And if it's an important one, don't try to take a shortcut. Invest the time and the energy and the resources you need to get the right partner, because it'll have a force multiplying effect on the back end.
And I wanted to add something.
Go for it.
I think actually when the partners you select and the countries they're from matter on the approach how you do the deal with them. And different cultures will promise you different things. And also the perception of time of execution can really be different, which is fine, but we live in the culture where everything is happening now, whereas now means completely different, for example, in Indonesia or any other country, right? So by knowing that, you can prep yourself, and also you can understand the urgency on your end. If you need to, for us, let's say, launch some bundle monetization deal, we are projecting it to have effect on the business this year, and we're implementing it now, but now means different for them. Now means 3 years. So kind of like those bumps on the road is worth knowing.
Yeah, it's a great point. With partners, exactly the same kind of reaction. Like, it's also a lot of times if you're a small startup that moves fast compared to like working with a big corporate partner who has a completely different time frame. Let's see, maybe this is related or maybe it's not. We talked a little bit offline about kind of content as well, and I think you had this term that you called like lean localization and cultural relevance. Maybe could you share some of your challenges and choices around your lean localization decisions?
Sure. I already mentioned that we kind of empowered our community to create our song catalog, right? So we have songs all around the world in any language. And we have a team called content marketing, which was a core to our success of understanding what content works and why. And they're kind of a combination of PhD in music, marketers, music people, and they constantly look at the data to understand what content works and in which markets, and trying to find overlapping trends across different markets. But the core component for us of lean localization is our users. Our content is self-referencing, which when somebody sings a song with someone else, it's a piece of content that we can use in our product, in our lifecycle marketing, in our UA, and so on. So we partner with machine learning, with analytics, with product, to use that content at scale across all marketing. And that had a tremendous impact on our business. I think good job, that team.
I would just add, the great thing about user-generated content is you don't have to localize it because it's all inherently localized. Yeah, that's a big part of our strategy as well. SEO is a big growth driver for us. People searching for car rental or car sharing. Typically, where we win is the long tail, where people are searching for like BMW rental in Cupertino, Tesla Model 3 in Hayes Valley, something along those lines. And it would take forever for us to build out, all of those keywords. And so what we do is we just rely on the vehicle listing pages. So when somebody lists their car, we ask them to write a short description about the car. We ask them to give the car a personality. We ask them to talk about themselves. They have a map location. Every time a car is booked, we have reviews. So we have rich content from the people who have booked the car and are writing, detailed reviews that have dates and they have star ratings. And so we've taken that same strategy and applied it to Germany, UK, and Canada, the other countries that we're in. And it's allowed us to sort of win SEO market share right off the bat. And it's beautiful because it just kind of self-scales. As the marketplace grows, we have more content, and therefore we rank for more keywords. So,
is that a dynamic for PicsArt as well?
It is, yeah. And SEO is becoming a bigger part of our growth story as we build out web. So we kind of went backwards. We started on mobile, and now we're building web. And it kind of makes sense because we were mobile app, then multi-platform mobile app, and now web, and web is catching up in terms of its tool sets. And all the content that's made public within the mobile kind of app ecosystem does get published to web now. So we're going to be SEOing all of that. So that's a good tip in terms of UGC SEO.
The only downside to SEO is that Google is slowly just making you pay for everything. So I wouldn't put too many eggs in the SEO basket. But if you can get some free wins there, for sure, it's a smart thing to capitalize on.
Cool. Regarding moving it from SEO to paid UA and creative. I know you touched on this already, Kristina, but you said a couple things which is interesting. Is that sometimes you've actually seen that actually localizing UA creative doesn't actually have an impact. And I thought that might be kind of interesting to hear. When is that and why?
Sure. So localizing creative, right, is it's going to resonate more with that region or that geo, but taking into consideration it's not just optimizing on creative, but overall the optimization funnel. So it needs to match the user experience throughout. It's a balance of both, really. So don't just solely focus on localization of creative, but focus on whether it's localization on the media of that region or even as further as by geo.
Yeah, I'd add we started English only globally and then worked from there. And then you have a good baseline. Like if we actually localize in Japan, what does that get you over the English version in Japan? Yeah. And you'll catch English users globally, of course, just by the nature of the language, right? Yeah. So there's like a quick win just by doing that.
It's fascinating too, like just aside to that, we run sometimes ads, let's say in Germany, to learn English in English. because we're aiming for an intermediate market segment, right? And we don't want a beginner necessarily. And so actually those ads perform better sometimes than the ads that are in German, right? But when we run German, we definitely need to use German copywriters, otherwise it's horrible, right? So.
And I think the creative's most important, the visual, right? I mean, we've had, English and translated or localized version and same creative, and like you'll see various differences in that. And it's really about the visual, the video, the image that goes with that.
Sure. There's like certain like global brands, games that might resonate. Everyone knows them. You should still localize. There's a couple examples where even genres that are very common. We work with a lot of game companies where it might be very vibrant, and then their app itself is very vibrant, very colorful. But for a creative, for a region that might be APEC, for instance, the creative, the eyes just might pop just a little bit more. We talked about saturation of the creative, but still the continuity from the creative to the user experience is key, not too much skewed towards just creative. Otherwise, what you end up finding is that drop off.
And I think that one of the scalable solutions can be not focusing on the geos, but generally focusing on the languages, as we're a global market. So we do target Japanese speakers around the world. We know they high LTV users, or like Spanish speakers and so on. That's a very scalable strategy.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. So before we open it up for questions, I want to ask maybe one more question to the panel, which is monetization and how that differs by geo, and kind of what have you learned, what mistakes have you made,
Yeah, sure, I can start. So I would say for us, it's been wildly different. We started off as in-app purchase or one-off purchase, really. But over time, we built this massive repository of premium content, stickers, fonts, frames, backgrounds, and then we started adding premium features there, and then we bundled it all and turned it into a subscription. So you have full access, monthly or annual. Now we're testing other terms as well. But in the earlier days, it wasn't as apparent that premium content repository was so valuable until we turned it into a subscription play. And now we're testing, pricing, different terms, different tiers by country, by platform, and we're seeing widely different results. Some countries just aren't willing to subscribe. That's just not in kind of their culture. They're just one-off purchase or microtransactions. Like, give me something today, not interested tomorrow type of situation.
Can you give me an example of some countries that you feel?
Well, the more challenging ones, I think the usual suspects. India is a tough one to monetize. Parts of Southeast Asia are tougher on subscription. And then, I'm sure you have some similar learnings. Yeah.
Yeah. For us, for sure, like subscription, we are a subscription business. We do have also microtransactions, social gifting that users can give each other, like stickers and so on, and appreciate each other. So we created it in the response that in some markets, it's not culturally relevant to have a recurring subscription, right? So our subscription strategy is similar based on different SKUs and offerings to users. But some interesting kind of learnings that, for example, our local partner in India gave us a tip that actually in India you should remind people that their subscription is coming up and they should top up their debit card. Whereas it will be a taboo in the US to remind your active subscriber about their subscription. So that's been really interesting for us to learn, and kind of how do we approach the markets. And we also have direct billing, right? Like where we can offer our power users a better deal other than going through the App Store. So I would suggest diversifying the offering. Also, you can have some partners, which with telcos and so on, to have bundled deals. If you want to enter the market or you're already strong in the market, so something to consider.
Yeah, I would add a +1 on just the payment method. I mean, it's so obvious, but in retrospect, but when we first launched in Germany, we didn't change our payment methods. It was credit card. It was sort of normally what people transact with in the US. And as soon as we added Sofort, which is the direct bank transfer, which is what most people use in Germany, we had 4x increase in conversion rate. Pretty much over the course of like 2 to 3 months. So kind of a no-brainer. Should have been part of the scope of the MVP and launching in the country. But super important.
There's so much that you don't know, right? When you go into other countries. So All right, we have a little bit of time for questions. Does anybody have something they'd like to ask the panel, or any of the panelists specifically? Go for it.
So, yeah, hi.
Go be loud if you don't mind. Yeah.
So the question was, in terms of localization, how much does an accent affect that as well? So say if you have a geo with several accents included, how much impact do you see in that with your localization?
Yeah, everybody here, how much does accent affect the localization? Anybody want to jump
In terms of ad creative or?
Ad creative,
Yeah, I would say that definitely impacts. I mean, we're starting to try more of that, but we're a very visual platform, so most of our ads they either have music or they're static, so they don't necessarily have people talking. But I think, the ads that do have people talking make sense to have the local accent. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. For us, similarly, people are singing, so of course they have various accents, and we actually welcome diversity on our platform. But when we're going into more brand units, like in India or Germany, we run TV campaigns. Of course, the accent matters. Or even if in India they speak in English, it needs to be local speaking in English.
I'd say for us on our end, it's very interesting. Different parts of the world want to learn British English, different parts of the world want to learn American English, and they really don't mix very well, right? And even in Asia, Taiwan wants to learn American English, Japan wants to learn British English, for example, and so having that right actually makes a big difference.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Go for it.
So how did you guys go about finding your partners in other locations?
Great question. So how do we go about finding our partners in other locations?
For us, of course, again, music is the core, so we made an effort to go into those markets through American connections and find music labels partners there. So, of course, leverage your American base to connect you to relevant people there. Also, we leveraged our relationship with Google, Apple, and those folks, some telcos here in the US as well, so kind of making those introductions, and then soliciting feedback on the partners, asking them which type of apps you worked before, give us an example. So yeah, it's definitely a decision tree. But you start from the US and your connections.
Yeah, I would say for us it was kind of three ways. One, talking to people at events like this and people in the space, like who are they using in Japan or who are they working with in China. Two is employees, because they've just made, especially if you're an international company, people know people. And third is community. We've actually had a lot of success with building out an influencer program within kind of the walls of PicsArt, and then forming a relation and dialogue with those folks and asking them questions like, who's important in Brazil, or who do you follow on Instagram in Germany, right? And we start to learn about what's important in those countries, and we'll chase those opportunities.
You guys have anything you want to jump in on any of those, or? In our case, we got lucky as hell. The CEO of Rakuten happened to use our app and really like it, and so that was how we found into that one. And then the second piece, for our Taiwanese partner, there was this company that we work with made Skype very, very large in Taiwan. Taiwan was actually one of the highest monetizing countries for Skype, because it solved a very fundamental problem of communication between Taiwan and the mainland very, very affordably back in the day. So basically, we had a very, very warm, friendly. So not very easy to replicate, but it was. So get lucky. Anyway, on that note, I just want to thank the panel very much for showing up. I think this is a really great talk. I think everybody's willing to be approached. If you've got specific questions you don't want to ask publicly, we'd love to hear from you. And thanks everybody for listening.